everybody. This is Jason Augustus Newcomb, and we are inside the Magic Circle, and I'm talking today with Aequus Nox, someone that I've been trying to get an interview with for quite a while, and she's finally relented and allowed this to happen. I'm very excited about it. Hopefully everything's going to work out, and the recording will work, even though we're still in Mercury retrograde, I think. So Aequus, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad I finally made it.
So Aequus has only been doing magic for a fairly short period of time, and we're going to get into that for a second, but she's already kind of become a fairly well-known person in the sort of cyber magic world, and she has her own podcast, obviously. What's your podcast called, Aequus?
It's called Barbarous Words with Aequus Nox.
Barbarous Words with Aequus Nox, something to check out, and you put them up on YouTube, yeah?
Yeah. So I have them up on YouTube right now. I want to eventually be able to push them to all podcast sites. Mm-hmm. So I've been sort of making some edits and stuff, trying to get the audio smoothed out so that I can get those uploaded. But yeah, right now they're just all on YouTube.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really bothered to try out putting mine anywhere else. Maybe you could give me some advice off air on what other places you can put your podcast besides putting it up on YouTube.
More complicated than people make it seem because you need extra things. So yeah, off camera I'll be happy to explain.
So let's start at the beginning. What drew you into magic in the first place?
So it's kind of a long story, but it started when I was pregnant because I I really wanted to know what was going to happen. So I started playing with tarot, but I didn't know that it was associated with the occult and magic and stuff like that.
What did you think it was?
I don't really know, I guess, because my aunt had a tarot reader when I was a kid. And so I just kind of thought that maybe it was just, I don't know, people read their horoscopes and stuff around me, but it just wasn't blatantly obvious. I wasn't interested, I guess. I don't know. So I was trying to figure it out when I was reading tarot cards, but it wasn't until I took a trip to Portland, and during that trip, I had a friend take me to a bookstore, and it was Powell's. So it's one of the most popular bookstores that are in Portland.
Yeah, and huge, amazing.
Yeah, amazing. And we don't have in the bookstores here in Salt Lake City or whatever, we don't have a ton of used bookstores or even ones that have occult book sections. So that's just not something that I ever stumbled across while I was here. So when we were there, she knew I was interested in tarot, and she was like, well, let's go look over at this section, right? So I was like, okay. So we go to the section, and she picks up Colin Wilson's The Occult. Mm-hmm. And she's like, well, if you want to know more about what you're doing, this is probably a good place to start. So I was like, okay. So I flipped the book open and I read one name. It was just Aleister Crowley. And I was like, so is this the guy? And she's like, it's a guy. And so I was like, what does that mean? So I just was like, okay, I'll go home and read this later. So obviously I didn't read it. I just went straight to Google because that made more sense to me.
Sure.
So I still haven't read the full book, I'm gonna be totally honest, but yeah, that's kind of what got me started was, as soon as I got home from that trip, Googling Aleister Crowley and kind of just figuring out what he was doing and what I wanted to do, I guess.
So are you involved in Aleister Crowley's whole trip? Are you part of the Thelemic community or something like that?
I guess for me it started with the Holy Guardian Angel, because yeah, I had never
what was your background growing up? Are you part of the Church of Latter-day Saints or
no? Actually, that's kind of the whole reason I just never really fit in here, because a large part of the population is part of the church, and I never was, and my family wasn't religious. I didn't have any background in religion or anything like that. So I guess I was looking for something to fill that gap in a way.
So in your life, there was no spiritual sustenance at all? There's nothing?
No,
What do you?
I was like basically I was fully focused on science,
Mm,
and I didn't believe, well, I was questioning what God was. I still don't really even know what I feel about that.
sure.
But
I mean, I think
yeah, I was,
that's a big question for most people throughout their
yeah,
lives. I'm thinking
it's
that's
such
really
a
good.
big question. And it was a question I was avoiding because yeah, I just like I was aware that there were so many different religions, and
Mm.
I could see the nuance in all of them. So I was like, why does nobody agree about this? I'm just not even gonna like deal with it. So I just didn't, and I just stayed away from everything until the occult happened, and then I had to like catch up on history and like see what
So
people have been doing.
your parents' background, were they were like atheists or just sort of like casual, non-religious people?
They were mostly just casual, non-religious. Like I think towards when I was like 16, my mom became a little bit more religious. My dad tried in and out, but it was never really like we never went to church on Sunday. We didn't have like a specific like church that we were a part of or whatever. And my parents, if they did have like religious beliefs, they kept it really private to themselves because I think even they didn't know like how they felt.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So yeah, so we just like didn't have like that part in our lives, but we were really interested. Like I said, I grew up reading my horoscope with my mom, for example, because iPhones have astrology apps.
Sure.
So so like you read your horoscope, but you don't. I just never kept questioning. Like I just was happy with what I knew, and yeah, I just wasn't. It wasn't until that trip that I just became like fully committed to like figuring out, because I had never like heard of the occult. Like I that's just really
Right.
strange. But
In Salt Lake City, I can imagine.
yeah, I was
It's
like, what's that? So so I just Googled my heart out.
it's interesting because astrology is, one of the oldest aspects of magic and occultism that we still have, and it's the one that seems to have permeated the culture the most effectively, since that people are still
I
interested
know.
in it, even if they have no concept that it is connected to anything else. So you discovered Aleister Crowley. And this is one of the things that's interesting about you as a case study, is that you are a person who, your introduction to the occult was primarily through the internet, and in it, like, I mean, a lot of the people that I've interviewed have been, involved in magic and occultism since the 1980s or so, or even earlier, and they, their discovery of things was in bookstores or through a friend or something like that. But you have so much information in front of you. How do you manage the amount of occult options that are out there?
Oh my gosh, that is like the question, because I feel like in a way I got pretty lucky because I took interest immediately in Aleister Crowley, which ultimately led me back to the PGM, in the end. Like that's like what I think I was really interested in at the time. But figuring that out took me a lot of wading through places that Aleister Crowley had been, and then also just like trying to catch up with what everybody has been doing, because obviously I wasn't part of like when chaos magic was really popular,
Mm-hmm.
and I wasn't interested when people started getting into like the new age stuff. And I didn't, I don't know a whole lot about Wicca, so I had to uh figure out, what I was interested in, because I mean, potentially all of them are options, even some of the newer stuff that's like, I don't know, there's just so much like new stuff being created. And
Yeah, constantly.
but I just really wanted something that had survived a long time. So I don't know, I guess there was just something mystical or something interesting about like the PGM and all of that. So that's where I ended up like landing.
So the Greek magical papyri at this moment is where your attention is, like the bets, or are you reading secondary stuff?
Yeah, I'm reading bets for the most part. I mean, I would love to have the other one, but I don't yet. So that's more just what I work with. Because yeah, I don't know. I still, it's very new to me because I went through, and I'm still going through, obviously, like exploring the grimoires and conjuration just in general, and necromancy and things like that. So that ended up being like my primary interest in everything that I was like looking for.
So let's take a tiny step back for a second. So you get home from your trip from Portland and you type Aleister Crowley into Google. Like what comes up for you? Like what journey was commenced from that?
So Wikipedia is obviously the primary source, and so it gives you just like a quick, here's all the high points that you can like research, right? So I read about the Holy Guardian Angel and the Book of the Law, and I'm like, this is like the strangest thing I've ever heard of in my life, right? So so I have to know more. So I start looking into a Bromlin, and I read a Bromlin, and I'm like, wow, that sounds way too hard. I don't know if I can do that.
Did you stumble across my book? I try not to be too arrogant with these things, but I'm curious because
I actually didn't. It was so crazy because I didn't come across your work until I got into the PGM stuff.
I don't think people realize that I wrote a book about the Obermalin operation at all. I think, because frankly, I think a lot of people have, you know, they sort of have moved to trying to do it by the exact grimoire, and my book is definitely not that. So, but anyway, back to you.
Yeah.
You're looking into the Holy Guardian Angel work sort of a little bit through the prism of Aleister Crowley, but you read the Obermalin book. It's interesting because your journey is not all that dissimilar from mine or a bunch of other people's, because the Obermalin book was one of the sort of popular books that was being talked about when I first came in, as well as Aleister Crowley, but it was all through books rather than the internet.
Yeah.
So, did you go out and buy the book, The Sacred Magic of Obermalin the Mage, or did you find an online version of it?
So I had an online version. I do have a copy now, just because I eventually ended up getting a nice copy, just a hardbound for me to like have. But yeah, the one that I was reading out of was just like, I think maybe the Kindle version, or from Barnes and Noble, something that was an ebook, because that's mostly what I read.
So was it the McGregor Mathers version, or was it the George Dane version?
It was the Mathers one, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was the Mathers one, and obviously there's so much to like learn around just that in general. So it wasn't until like I found the online community that like I really started to understand like what was going on and like what people were doing these days, because I kind of just didn't know. Like I had no idea. So I had to connect with people online in order to like ask questions and figure out what to do.
So what do your practices at this point look like?
So right now my practices mainly are like in the mornings I have a lot of altars that I maintain. So I started working with my ancestors, so they get their offerings in the morning, right before I eat my breakfast, and then I do some other altar maintenance with some other, I don't know, like Hecate, for example. And then if I were to do a conjuration, which I don't all the time, even though I have some, I wouldn't say it's a lot of experience with it, but I use Luminarium as a framework.
Okay. Yeah, I just talked to BJ Swain yesterday. So
yeah. So BJ is like amazing, and he has pretty much helped me since day one. Like, he's always been able to answer my questions and give me like resources to follow. And so if I'm asking something, he can always either answer it or give me somebody who can answer it. So a lot of like everything that I do is because of him.
So how many sort of internet gurus are you carrying at this point? BJ is one, and who else do you talk to regularly?
I talk to a lot of people. So obviously I really was influenced by Rufus Opus as well.
Okay.
So I did, or I'm doing, the Seven Spheres. And Yeah, I don't know, like Rob Ryder Hill is someone who is really influential and really helpful, and Matt Hadfield and Annalise Antoinette, of course. She's like, she teaches me so much, and we're just such good friends. So I don't know, I have a lot of
You
people
have a
that
lot
are
of resources.
responsible for teaching me things. Like,
Do you have anyone in your local area that you can get together with and do magical things with, or no?
no, well, I mean, COVID has been kind of crazy.
Sure.
So,
How much of your magical journey has taken place during the coronavirus pandemic?
like most of it, I
Really?
would
Oh,
say.
okay. Wow.
Yeah, like yeah, most of it. It'll be 2 years this summer. So I haven't fully hit my 2 year mark yet.
Hmm.
So I would say, yeah, most of it is all been in quarantine. So
That's
yeah.
wild.
Yeah, it is wild. It's really like I look forward to when I can, I'm hopefully moving soon, and where I'm moving has like a community. So I'm hoping when I get there, I'll be able to like work with other people in person and, do more of that.
Still in Utah or somewhere else?
I'm actually gonna go to Portland.
Oh,
So
really? Okay.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So because that's just like everywhere I go when I need a vacation, I go to Portland. So it
I mean,
just makes more sense to move there.
Portland definitely has a big magical community. Actually, a lot of my friends that
Yeah.
go back, decades at this point, are either from Portland or Eugene. So it's a big Oregon occult community for sure.
Yeah.
Um, and then California isn't too far away from there, and Washington isn't too far away from there. So it's
Yeah, there's a
a
lot of
lot of
people in
West
Seattle
Coast.
as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a
So
good community. Like I said, it should hopefully, like I said, when we move in a couple months, that's where I'll be. So I can start, getting involved like that way.
sure. Do you know what is it like in Portland as far as the shutdown? Are they very quarantined there? Because it
I think
like
so.
honestly, I live in Florida, and we're basically back to normal here. I mean, there's no I mean, I wear a mask every time I go out, but everybody else does not. So this is interesting. I'm trying not to set these too much in the context of this particular time because I want them to sit on the internet forever. But
Yeah.
but your story is sort of interesting because of its context being so much in an isolated place. So I mean, obviously you can utilize the internet to get a lot of stuff. Do you have like a full temple setup where you have a circle and altars and stuff like that, or no?
Yeah, so it's actually pretty close to me. It's like off to the right. So I have like an altar space, and if I am doing like a conjuration, I have a table that's specifically there that I can set up as a
Mhm.
temple. So because obviously I have animals and a child, so I have to like put things away in order
Mhm.
for them
Yeah.
to not get disturbed. So I have like a temporary setup that I use, and then obviously I will like clean the area and cleanse the area, purify the area, do a floor wash, things like that, so that it's set up. And then the type of circle that I do is not like a typical circle. It's more just like a smoke circle. So
Okay.
it's just more like symbolically making that space.
Sure.
I've used other types of circles in the past, but I'm not like opposed to them. I just personally haven't felt like they were necessary. So I just have like an altar space where I do all my work.
Well, honestly, I mean, I think that the majority of magicians do what you're talking about. They just sort of have a psychic circle that they set up in somewhere or another.
Yeah.
I've always found that having something on the ground, for me, it adds to the experience of the sort of separateness of that space from other spaces, particularly if you're in kind of like a found space that you're working in. But yeah, I mean, it's not abnormal to do that at all. Uh,
Yeah.
do you ever put down a circle of any kind, like a taped circle or a chalk circle
So
or
I
anything like
have in the past, the circles that I've used in the past were just made out of like a white cord.
that? Mhm.
So, I've never used like a full, because those sheets that have, that you could draw your circle on it potentially on a sheet and do that,
Mhm.
but it's just costly. And so I've never gone that far. But yeah, as far as like anything that represents like a physical circle, probably just like a string.
So and you're saying, you say that you utilize a lot of sort of Rufus Opus's work and BJ Swain's work as far as ritual technology. Do you combine those things together, or are you working one or the other of them? Do you feel like you are allowed to, or do you feel like you confine yourself?
That's such an interesting question, because I think this is what I'm trying to like work out and right now anyways. So I use them separately right now, but I feel like technically you could use parts from both or one or the other.
Sure.
So right now I'm really interested in like grimoire syncretism, or at least what practices you could use and not use from different, not even just those two. Like I've looked at a lot of different grimoires and a lot of different frameworks, and obviously stuff from the PGM. So that's kind of like my current exploration right now.
That's what I was going to get into, like because like the PGM has its own sort of scripts throughout, and do you feel comfortable bringing those together into the, because I mean I would feel comfortable doing that. I do that fairly regularly, with just sort of taking a piece of this and a piece of that and putting them together, but you're sort of new to it, so how, what does it feel like for you in putting those things together? Do you feel like you're breaking rules, or?
Yeah, I feel like I'm always breaking rules, especially because when I compare my practice to some other people stick to one manuscript or one type of thing, and some people are more comfortable flexing what they do. And so, for me, it's just been trying to feel confident enough to make changes and to do like what works better for me. And like ultimately in the end, like I've recently taken Jack Grail's Hail Hecate. So that really changed a lot of like how I was looking at things, I think. So yeah, I'm trying to bring more like Hecate in my practice, and more of that. And like, I don't know, I have so much to explore and I like experimenting. So that's kind of like the other thing.
I know from doing this interview with Jack and Rufus, BJ, we didn't get as much into it, although he's definitely syncretizing stuff himself in most of his work. So I mean, he's inherently doing that. But I know Rufus and Jack both are very keen on telling people that they should experiment and find their own way, not feel religiously stuck to their particular work. So
and that's why I really am influenced by those three people, because that is, again, like what I need to hear, I think, and what a lot of beginners need to hear is that they can do that, because sometimes you will meet people who will tell you otherwise, and you have to like know better.
Right. Well, I mean, I think both are true to a certain extent. Like you wouldn't want to just randomly grab things without understanding the structure that that is intended by them all. But once you see that structure by looking at those three people's works, and some others too, you can see that there is there is a structure that you could pull this piece out of this one and this piece out of that one, and it's not really changing anything inherently. You're just changing a few words here and there, or adding a sequence to it or something like that. So that's great. So let's talk about sort of like what you experience when you are doing your work at this point. Now you're in an advantageous position because you have a lot of people giving you advice, but a disadvantageous position because you probably haven't seen very many other people do ritual, or experienced being amongst other people. So when you were, let's not talk about your devotional work, because that's fine. I mean, I'm sure that there are things that happen there too. But when you are doing a conjuration, like what kind of results do you expect from that, and generally get?
So I used to expect like a super obvious spirit presence, and I would get really let down if I didn't have that experience. And over time, talking to people, I realized that it doesn't always have to be like that. Sometimes it can be really subtle things that indicate spirit presence. So that was something that I had to like get the hang of. So for me, because I'm not super practiced with scrying or anything like that. I just really rely on like my senses. So if the temperature changes, for example, that's something that's noticeable, or if like there's candle flickering in a certain way or whatever, and then once I've kind of sensed there's a change or a shift or maybe an energy in the area, then I'll start with my pendulum and I'll start asking questions, trying to see if I have who I'm looking for, and
So,
then ask questions. So
your communication is basically exclusively through a pendulum at this point?
yeah. So I also do like closed eye scrying
Mhm.
sometimes, and I'm able to get like images that I could then ask with my pendulum, like, is this what you meant to show me? Is this what, So it's not like, as I don't know, I just expected something different. So it's very it's happened, but it's not like crazy, like it's very normal to me at this point.
I
So
mean, I do think that there are times when you can have very profound visionary experiences from ritual. So I mean, I wouldn't
yeah,
take that off the table for yourself, but I do
I'm
I do
not, I just right now haven't had anything like that happen. So
nothing at all. You don't. I mean, but I mean, you have to create a context for it. I honestly think it's easier to have those sorts of experiences when you are working with at least one other person, because then you can just sort of be the visionary and sit there and have that experience and not
yeah,
have to be thinking about anything like whether the candles are burning down the house, or like if you
yeah,
can totally immerse yourself in it, it's easier. So I think you'll probably have more of those types of experiences as you start working with people, but you have to find the right people to work with, because some people really aren't good for that at all. So
yeah.
um so have you done any practicing with sort of just sort of scrying though in general? Is that something that you do, like, at all, or
It's
I know you
something that
mentioned
I've
close.
made efforts to do, but I just I don't know, I just have a really intense monkey mind. And so like settling myself down enough to try to scry is kind of a challenge.
Right.
So yeah, it's something that's very much in my I want to do and I want to learn list, but I've only had like so much time to practice with it. So, maybe in a couple of years I can report back that
Okay.
I've had like some more experience with that. But yeah, right now, it's more just like a try and fail than anything.
Well, you're never failing, you're always having some sort of experience.
Yeah, yeah, okay. Yeah, fair enough.
Not just not as much as you'd like, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about practical magic for a second. So what do you utilize your magical work to accomplish things at times?
So I do, but I have other things that I do for practical magic as well. So it's not always conjuration
Hmm?
that I'm doing for practical magic,
What other stuff are
especially
you doing?
because we have the PGM now. So I'm trying to do more practical things with the PGM. That's where I want to be going with my practical stuff. But for the most part, right now, I just do like candle magic and planetary stuff, and I just work with spirits that I'm familiar with, to get some of the more daily stuff done rather
Hmm?
than always doing a full on like conjuration every time I need like to do something.
So when you're doing a daily thing, what is it that you're doing?
So like a daily thing for me, like I said, if it's like depending on like the day of, so, you know, the planetary day. So
Hmm?
I would just do a planetary working for that day. So I would probably get like a candle that's like the appropriate color. I would carve some correspondences or some goals or desires or something like that into the candle.
Hmm?
Um, then I like anoint it with oils that are corresponding as well. So whatever, as an offering. And then usually all of this is going down at the right hour. So for the day in the right hour. And
Hmm?
then I will, light it and light some incense. And yeah, that's just kind of like my daily, if I need like to do that. And then I do like because I'm getting into astrology. So I do like daily remediations for planets depending on, so like for me right now, I'm remediating Saturn. So I'm hoping to start doing like a daily Saturn mantra, something like that. So just kind of like it for me, it's ever changing because it's based on my current needs or like weaknesses, I guess. So
And so what's afflicted in Saturn for you? Is there something to do with your nativity or
well,
something
it's my
else?
Saturn return.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, so since it's my Saturn return, Saturn is actually in a good placement for me. Saturn is in Aquarius for me, so it kind of works out okay. But yeah, I still, because it's my Saturn return, it feels like a good time to remediate Saturn. So yeah. So yeah.
Sounds fair enough. So let's talk about your podcast for a minute. What made you decide to start a podcast at this point in your magical journey?
Rufus. So so I when I started, I read Living Spirits. So I read Living Spirits and I wanted to do like a review of Living Spirits. And so BJ invited me to just do an interview. And so we posted that on my blog. And then anyways, I started talking to Rufus and he's like, well, we should talk about Jupiter sometime, but like we should just do it over like on audio. And I was like, okay, of course, like that's probably easier. Like it didn't occur to me sooner. So I was like, all right. So yeah, so once I did that, it was received really well. And so I just kind of kept doing it because I had lots of people I wanted to ask questions to. So yeah, I just kind of based on what I was researching, started scheduling people.
So your podcast is essentially just organic based on what you're interested in at the moment. I think that's a really cool way of approaching things. I mean, that's basically my premise is the same thing. There's various people who I'm like, this person seems interesting to me. I'd like to know where they came to this idea and why they're thinking this way. So I mean, that's great. So what do you see the future for yourself to be in terms of, obviously you're diving in on Greek magical papyri and podcasting.
So I don't know. So I want to keep podcasting probably at like a slower rate just because I am getting more involved in like doing magic. So I just want to spend more time doing and as organically as it comes up, release stuff like that's my thoughts on what I've just learned basically. So it's all just like live reporting from what I'm learning in a way because and then I get to ask people questions and share them because I know there's so many people who are in a similar position and just like looking for answers.
Absolutely.
So yeah, so it's just easy for me to like do a couple things at once and ask the things that I want to know while also like sharing that with people, I guess. So yeah.
Now I know you're going to be teaching a course for Rufus Opus at his Hermetic Academy, and do you see yourself writing a book or anything like that? Are books dead? Are we done with books?
So I don't know if books are dead because I really want to write a book. I love writing. Like writing is like I was talking to a friend recently and how we were talking about how it's like kind of like an alchemical process or like you just get an opportunity to like go over things multiple times when you write and it just kind of evolves and changes into something that I don't know, even if it may have been said before, it's my way. So I might do that eventually. The class is the first thing that I want to do, because I just want to share like the beginner stuff, I guess.
What is the class going to be on?
Yeah, mostly just the beginner stuff. So like, it's crazy to say, but like there was a time I didn't know like what an altar was, or like what you would do at an altar, or like that it was necessary to ward your house, or what, cleansing was, or anything like that. Like those were completely new concepts to me like a year and a half ago. So I'm just basically trying to get like the step one for people out there, and based on like where I just was. So whatever I can come up with, it's just going to be like the most entry level stuff so that people can go from there.
So your husband and your family, what do they think of this like new thing that you've gotten into in the last couple of years?
Um, I think that everybody's pretty okay with it. Like, honestly, I think they kind of expected this type of weirdness from me,
Mm.
eventually. So I don't know, I guess.
Have they been hiding it from you all these years? Like we're gonna keep this away from her as long as possible.
Honestly, I don't even think that people knew like that I would be interested in it, or
Mm.
like, well, I don't know how, they did, but I'm a unique character, and so I will explore a lot of different things. And
Mm.
so it makes sense that I would eventually end up interested in the occult, because I am always exploring and asking questions. But yeah, like, I don't know, ultimately my family has been super accepting, and even though it's not their thing, I think all of them secretly listen to my podcast. So
Do you
yeah.
do you do tarot readings for them or anything like that at this point, or no?
I would if they wanted one, but I don't. I mostly do it for my friends.
Mm.
So just, friends I have within occult circles, if they need someone to divine for them because, they don't want to divine for themselves,
Sure.
I'll do that sort of thing. And for like my sister, she's actually okay with things like that. My friends, like some of my closer older friends are okay with it, but yeah, it just depends. So people know that I will if they ask me, because it's good to have like that experience. But I try not to like push my tarot card readings on people, like unless that's what they want. So yeah.
Yeah, I tend to try and avoid that stuff myself, especially with people, in my community, because um, I'm already sort of the oddball, so pushing weird things on them more is sometimes a little too pushy. But so you mentioned a couple months ago that you were kind of feeling a little bit of like pushback in the occult community, or feeling kind of annoyed with people. Has that settled at this point, or are you still feeling like there's some stuff that needs to be? Because I know I feel like
Um,
there's some stuff that needs to be changed in the occult community. So where's your head at with that?
that's such an interesting question, because yeah, I didn't expect that I would ever like just, I don't know, get on the wrong side of someone's opinion. So I don't know, I wasn't used to being on the internet like to this level.
And
So I guess I just have
without
had to
without
like be
divulging names or any
comfortable.
specifics, what
Yeah.
sort of was going on that you were feeling pressure about?
Well, it's just easy to make like a misunderstanding on the internet. Sometimes
Hmm.
people can take your words and misunderstand what you meant, and uh decide that they don't like you as a result, and start telling other people about that. And it's just kind of like, we see it all the time, and I think everybody has the right to say their opinions about how they feel. So, but sometimes it's just like way too much stress. So, yeah, so I've had to really like monitor how much I involve myself, just so that, because I'm still learning, and I have so much to like still do, that I'm trying to, be here in the long run and not make too many like people upset by being new. So
So was it just things you said on threads on Facebook or something,
yeah,
or
yeah, I'm always like saying, not, I am terrible at communicating sometimes. Let's just say that. Like sometimes
as
I
a
just
writer
can't.
and podcaster, I find that a little hard to believe, but okay.
Yes, I know, but it's true. Like sometimes I say things that aren't like exactly what I'm trying to say.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's just easy to misunderstand me and where I'm coming from. And I try my hardest to, you know, I don't know, correct anything if, apologize if I offended anybody, because I really never mean to, like genuinely never mean to. So yeah, I just, I'm just trying to do my thing and like not upset anybody in the process.
Well, unfortunately, I think you're going to upset somebody at almost, if you have any opinion whatsoever, there's someone who's going to disagree very strongly with you.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. So that's, like I said, it's been like a learning experience for me, being able to like accept when that happens. Because before I just really like, I stayed off. Well, I was with my close friends, on the internet, but I wasn't
Right.
on threads, or, I wasn't in part of any greater communities. So it's been a lot of learning just all around. So yeah.
And I don't think there's a single person I've talked to date who doesn't feel like they still have a lot to learn. Some of whom have been in the occult community for 40 years or more. So,
Yeah.
there's always things to learn.
Yeah.
And there's
I
always
have a long journey ahead. So yeah.
the funny thing about where you're at is you're coming in at this point where, I mean, there are a lot of things that I was led to believe were just completely true, like the idea that the tarot was uh, you know could be traced to ancient Egypt and was the ancient book of Thoth, like that was like presented as factual. And various things about the history of witchcraft and various things about the sort of the pedigree of the Golden Dawn have been essentially debunked in the past decade or so. And like, so your occultism is very different from the occultism that I was presented with all these sort of myths being presented as realities. And I think that, like, there are new myths and there are new falsehoods being presented today, but it's just it's an entirely different picture. So it's been really interesting. So I've been asking this question lately of everybody, like, if you could give a piece of advice to a young person or an old person, a person who's just coming into discovering the occult for themselves, what would be the thing that you would suggest that they do first?
That they do first.
Or best,
That,
what do you think? What was a misstep that you made that you would like help want to steer someone in a different direction?
I feel like a misstep that I made was just understanding, just in general, like magical safety. So,
Okay.
just in general, like, obviously magic isn't safe, right? So we all know that. But I think it's important to really like, I don't know, have something in your routine that is to protect you. So there are a million things that you can do for that, but that's like the first thing I probably would tell anybody is, like, before you start playing with magic, learn to protect yourself. So yeah, by that I mean, like, I just told a friend recently about a book there. It's called By Rest of Nail and Prick of Thorn, I think. Annalise showed that to me. And so it's just got like it's like a $3 Kindle book, and you can read it really fast, and it just kind of goes over what you might encounter when you start getting into the magical world and what you might need to like protect yourself from in that case. So yeah, that was like my first magical misstep, I would say, was just like not doing that earlier on. So yeah.
Would you mind sharing a negative result that came from not doing that?
So from not doing that, well, obviously, when you're doing magic, sometimes, especially like, I've gone out in nature to do magic before. So I've gone out and done spells in nature, and as a result, um, made, I wouldn't call them, they're not friends. I've made spiritual acquaintances out in nature, let's say, and not knowing that, you could be followed home or things like that. Just basically just energies in general, like what is coming in and out of your house, as you're doing things, is really important. So, my house started to get really I don't know, chaotic, and everything was just like a mess, and I was just like stressed out and wondering what was going on. And So it wasn't until I did a conjuration of, I think it was Phaleg, so an Olympic spirit, and I was like, hey, so like, can you help me figure out why things are so crazy? And the answer was pretty much, well, you brought home a friend and you need to like ward and cleanse your house. So that's like what I ended up landing on. But after I did that, like just everything felt better.